Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a topic today that you, the listeners, have been hungry for, so to speak: space food. You've sent us a ton of fascinating articles about it, from asteroid mining for food all the way to that time Uber Eats delivered to the ISS, and of course the age-old question of how we'll feed astronauts on a mission to Mars.
It really is a fascinating topic, isn't it? It connects something as fundamental as eating with, well, the final frontier of space exploration.
It really does make you think, how do we sustain human life on those long, lonely journeys through the cosmos? And what's it going to look like when we try? One of the articles you all sent over explored mining asteroids for food. I mean, come on, how sci-fi does that sound?
It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, sure.
Yeah.
But a recent study from Western University suggests it might be more within reach than we think. It's interesting when you think about it. This idea, it kind of echoes how resourceful explorers have always had to be throughout history. When explorers landed on new shores, they had to adapt quickly and use whatever resources they could get their hands on just to survive. Now fast forward to the vastness of space, and asteroids, well, they become those local resources. They become those oases in the depths of space.
Now, that is a comparison I never thought I'd hear. So does this mean our astronauts are going to be out there whipping up salads on some asteroid?
Well, it's not quite as easy as just space salads, unfortunately, but I like how you're thinking. The core idea here is that we got to utilize what's already out there. And scientists are really interested in this type of asteroid called a carbonaceous chondrite. These asteroids are chock full of organic compounds, which are like the building blocks of life, and even water.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little lost. What makes these asteroids so special?
Imagine them like giant cosmic lunch boxes, just waiting for us to open. They have the ingredients we need to potentially create food, which is where missions like OSIRIS-REx are so important.
Oh, yeah. That mission that brought back samples from that asteroid, Bennu.
Bingo. And by studying those samples, scientists can figure out how to extract and use the resources locked up inside these asteroids. One of the techniques they're looking at is pyrolysis. Basically, you use crazy high heat in an oxygen-free environment to break those asteroid organics into simpler compounds.
So instead of baking a cake, we're baking asteroids. I'm into it. What happens to those compounds afterward, though?
That's where it gets really interesting. Scientists think they can use microbes, like tiny little chefs, to transform those compounds into edible biomass. It might sound like Star Trek, but the science is solid. In fact, researchers have estimated that one single asteroid, just like Bennu, could produce enough food to sustain thousands of astronaut life years.
Thousands. Hold on, back up a second. We're talking about enough food from one asteroid to feed generations of space travelers. That changes everything when it comes to those long-haul missions, doesn't it?
It's a game changer. This could completely revolutionize space exploration as we know it. Imagine heading to Mars and not having to survive solely on prepackaged meals from Earth. This ability to just make food in space opens up opportunities for longer and more ambitious missions.
Like those sci-fi books where humans are colonizing planets and growing food out among the stars. You're saying it's not as far-fetched as it sounds.
Exactly. Though, gotta be honest, we are still in the early stages. We still need to figure out how to actually mine and process these asteroids out in the harsh environment of space. And of course, the age-old question, will asteroid food taste any good? Would you trade in a juicy burger for an asteroid-derived protein bar?
Now that is the question. It makes you think about the psychology of food, especially on those long space voyages. Speaking of which, one of the articles you sent mentioned the first Uber Eats delivery to space. That's a story and a half, and I think it might give us some insight into how astronauts' relationship with food changes when they're no longer bound to Earth. Okay, so asteroid protein bars are off the table for now, but Uber Eats in space, that's wild.
It really is. It shows just how far we'll go for a good meal, even in space.
Right, like you're in space. But seriously though, this story got me thinking. It's not just about fueling the astronauts' bodies, it's about nourishing their minds and souls too, right? Especially on those long missions.
Absolutely. The psychological well-being of astronauts is crucial, especially when you're talking about journeys that last for months, even years.
So, back to Uber Eats. Did they attach a rocket to a pizza box or what?
I wish.
Yeah.
No, it was a Japanese billionaire, Yusaku Masawa, who made it happen.
Yeah.
He actually hitched a ride up to the ISS himself and decided to surprise his crewmates with some canned Japanese dishes. Like comfort food from home, boiled mackerel, beef bowls, that kind of thing.
Oh, that That's actually kind of sweet. So no interstellar pizza delivery just yet, but I get it. Even in space, you crave something familiar, something that reminds you of home.
Exactly. And that craving for variety, for something that feels familiar and comforting, becomes even more important when we're talking about longer missions, like that trip to Mars we were talking about.
Yeah, can you imagine? Months, maybe even years of nothing but pre-packaged meals.
It'd be enough to make anyone go stir crazy.
There's a limit to how much freeze-dried ice cream one person can take. So how do we keep our astronauts happy and well-fed on these longer trips? I mean, we got to nourish their bodies and their minds.
That's where this idea of neurogastronomy comes into play, which we touched on a bit earlier.
Neurogastronomy. Sounds fancy.
It does sound like something straight out of Star Trek, doesn't it? But it's a real field of study, and it's all about understanding the complex relationship between our brains and the food we eat.
So, like, not just the science behind the food itself, but also the psychology of how we experience it.
Exactly. Think about it. Why do some smells instantly transport us back to a specific moment? Or why are certain food memories so powerful? Neurogastronomy digs into how our senses, especially taste and smell, influence how we perceive and remember a meal.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole brain-food connection could be game-changing for space travel.
Right. As we venture further into space, those missions are only going to get longer.
Mhm.
We have to go beyond simply providing enough calories. The food needs to be appealing, satisfying, even when you're millions of miles from Earth,
Otherwise, space travel is going to be one long, bland ride.
and nobody wants that. This is where neurogastronomy can help. By understanding how our brains create that experience of a delicious, satisfying meal, we can actually start to engineer food for space that goes way beyond just basic sustenance.
So we're talking about creating these, like, multi-sensory meals for astronauts, right? Meals that are nutritious, but also delicious and, I don't know, emotionally satisfying, even when they're light years away from a home-cooked meal.
You hit the nail on the head. But, it's trickier than it sounds.
Oh, I bet.
Wow.
Where do you even begin?
Well, for starters, our sense of smell actually changes in space.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It gets a lot weaker in microgravity.
Huh, I had no idea. Does that mean everything tastes blander in space?
That's one of the big challenges. Our sense of smell is super connected to how we taste things. So if your sense of smell is out of whack, it can throw off your whole perception of a meal.
Wow, I never thought about that. What are scientists doing about it? Are they, like, designing space food with extra potent flavors or something?
They're trying all sorts of things. Some researchers are experimenting with adding aroma molecules to the food, kind of like a little scent booster for your meal.
Like those things you plug into the wall?
Exactly. Other scientists are looking at ways to directly stimulate the trigeminal nerve.
Trigeminal nerve. Remind me what that one does again.
It's the nerve responsible for sensations like spiciness, coolness, that fizzy feeling you get from soda. So by targeting this nerve, they're hoping to create more intense and varied tastes for astronauts, even if their sense of smell isn't working at 100%.
That's incredible. It's like we're entering a whole new world of space cuisine.
It really is. But, it's not all about biology. We also have to think about the psychological side of food.
Right, like food and mood are totally connected.
Exactly. Imagine being cooped up in a spaceship for months, even years. Food becomes more than just fuel in that scenario. It's a reminder of home, a way to connect with your crewmates, a source of comfort in a very strange and isolated environment. Even here on Earth, we use food to celebrate, to socialize, to unwind.
Totally. Sharing a meal with someone is a bonding experience.
And in space, where you're cut off from everything and everyone familiar, those rituals, those shared meals, become even more crucial. It's about fostering a sense of community and normalcy when you're millions of miles away from anything that feels normal.
It's amazing how food touches on so many different aspects of our lives, from basic biology to psychology and culture.
It truly does. And the exciting thing is that a lot of what we're learning about how to feed people in space can be applied right here on Earth.
Oh yeah, how so?
Well, for one, think about sustainability. Remember those closed-loop systems designed for space travel, where you're constantly recycling and reusing resources?
Oh, right, like those self-sustaining ecosystems they're developing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Those same principles can revolutionize food production here on Earth, making it more efficient and sustainable.
So space exploration could help us create a more sustainable food system for everyone.
Absolutely. And it's not just about sustainability. Research into astronaut nutrition, understanding how microgravity affects things like gut health and nutrient absorption that can lead to breakthroughs in human health that benefit all of us.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive, and honestly, I'm completely stuffed with information, that is. Before we go, any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that the future of food is something we're actively creating, both here on Earth and in the vastness of space. By pushing the boundaries of what's possible, we can ensure that everyone has access to delicious and sustainable food, whether they're on Earth or exploring a distant planet.
Perfectly said. It just goes to show something as familiar as food can lead to incredible discoveries and a tastier future for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of space food. A huge thank you to all of you for sending in your questions and sparking such an engaging conversation. And remember, the next time you sit down to a meal, whether it's a bowl of ramen or a space-age protein bar, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey that food has taken to get to your plate. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and bon appetit.